I'm not the kind of guy who believes in signs, but that night in Portland felt like a warning sh*t I didn't hear until it was too late. My name is Ethan Cooper. I'm 37, a landscape architect from Seattle. And if you'd asked me 6 months ago, I would have said my life was steady. Predictable in a good way. I had a fulfilling job, a small but loyal circle of friends, and a wife I genuinely loved. Lena. I used to think of her name like a soft landing, familiar, safe. We'd been married for 9 years. Not perfect, but strong. Or so I thought. She was the one who suggested we go to the reunion. Her exact words, "Come on, Ethan. It'll be fun. We haven't seen these people in ages." She'd already RSVP'd by the time she told me. That should have been my first clue. I didn't fight her on it. I thought it'd be harmless. I figured we'd go, sip some cheap cocktails, smile through awkward conversations, then head back to our hotel with nothing but sore feet and maybe a hangover. But there's a difference between expecting nostalgia and running straight into your past. The reunion was held at this trendy rooftop venue downtown, high above the Portland skyline. Industrial decor, fairy lights, open bar, the whole thing screamed, we're all still young and thriving, even if most of us were clinging to the edge of our 30s. The music was the same mix of college-era hits, songs we once screamed into the night during tailgates or cheap beer-fueled parties. Lena looked beautiful that night. She wore this dark green dress I hadn't seen in a while, something she usually saved for fancier occasions. Her hair was curled a little looser, her makeup just a touch more dramatic. I remember noticing it and smiling, thinking she's putting in effort. For me. I wish I could go back and slap that version of myself. At first, the night was exactly what I expected. Polite small talk with old classmates, you haven't changed a bit, lies, stories that had aged better than we had. I trailed after Lena as she moved from one conversation to the next, charming people the way she always did. She has this way of making you feel like the most important person in the room even when she's only half listening. It used to be one of the things I admired most about her. And then I lost sight of her for a few minutes. It was probably no more than 10 minutes, maybe 15, but when I found her again, she was across the room, arms wrapped around someone. Not in a casual, haven't seen you in years way. It was slow, lingering. The kind of hug that says, I've missed you in a way words never could. Her cheek rested on his shoulder and her hand stayed on his back even as they swayed slightly in place. She looked peaceful, like she was home. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a navy blazer that somehow managed to look both expensive and casual. I knew him before I even fully saw his face. Trent Madison. Former basketball team captain. One of those guys everyone remembered. Lena had never talked about him much, but I remembered seeing a picture once, old yearbook style. Her arm around him. Back then I'd asked, were you two a thing? And she'd replied, not really. Just a college fling. Right? She didn't notice me watching. Didn't even glance around the room to see if I was nearby. She was too absorbed in the moment, like nothing else mattered. Eventually, I walked over. She stepped back just enough to turn to me and say, Ethan, this is Trent. We go way back. And that was it. No guilt, no explanation, just that breezy, practiced smile she used with strangers and clients. Trent reached out to shake my hand. I returned it stiffly. His grip was firm, his eyes confident in that effortless way people like him always seem to have. Good to meet you, man, he said. Lena's told me a lot about you. I doubt that. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I sipped my drink, smiled on autopilot, made small talk with people I barely remembered. But I couldn't stop watching them. Every time Lena laughed too loudly or drifted a little too close to where Trent was standing, my stomach twisted. It wasn't what I saw, it was what I felt. Eventually, we left the party. The ride back to our hotel was quiet. I didn't bring it up until we were both getting ready for bed. She was brushing her hair in front of the mirror when I finally said, you seemed really comfortable with Trent. She met my eyes in the mirror. What's that supposed to mean? I shrugged. Just that I noticed. That hug. It wasn't exactly casual. She laughed. Actually laughed. Oh my God, Ethan. It was just a hug. We dated for, like, a semester in college. You're seriously jealous. It's not about being jealous, I said, a little sharper than I meant to. It just didn't look like nothing. She turned to face me then, eyes a little tired, a little defensive. It's nostalgia. That's all. We were kids. It meant nothing. Don't make this into something it's not. And maybe I would have let it go, if it weren't for the way she touched her necklace while she said it. Lena always fidgets with her necklace when she's uncomfortable. When she's lying. I nodded and said nothing. Slipped under the covers and stared at the ceiling until sleep eventually dragged me under. But the damage was done. because from that night on, something in my brain refused to shut off. The image of her in his arms, the casual lie, the ease with which she dismissed me, it replayed over and over, gnawing at my trust like termites in a foundation I thought was solid. And it wasn't just the hug. It was everything she didn't say, the way she avoided my eyes, the sudden interest in going to Portland, the green dress I hadn't seen in months, the sparkle in her eyes when she saw him, so different from the polite affection she gave me most days. I used to think betrayals happened in loud, dramatic moments. Slamming doors, shouted confessions, lipstick-stained collars. But the truth is, sometimes they start in silence. In a hug that lasts too long. In a glance held a second too long. In the way someone forgets you're even there. That night at the reunion, something shifted. I didn't know how much at the time. I still told myself we were fine. Just tired, just stressed, just a weird night. But in my gut, I knew. Something had cracked. And cracks, if ignored, don't disappear. They widen. They split. And eventually, they break you wide open. After the reunion, I wanted to believe things would go back to normal. That the hug, the awkward lie, the little shift in her expression, it was all just a weird, isolated thing. But the truth is, once a crack forms, you start noticing everything. Every uneven line, every splinter, things you used to step over without thinking suddenly trip you up. I tried to shake it off for a while. Told myself I was overthinking, that I was being paranoid. But once you've seen something you can't unsee, your brain doesn't let go so easily. That week after we came home from Portland, Lena was quieter than usual. Not exactly cold, but preoccupied, distracted. And I started realizing this wasn't new. It had been happening for months. I just hadn't wanted to admit it. Her trips to Portland had started maybe 5 months earlier. She worked with a nonprofit focused on early childhood education. She said they were opening new partnerships with schools in Oregon. It made sense. Lena had always been passionate about that kind of work. And I'd supported it, encouraged it even. But suddenly the frequency ramped up. 1 trip every month became 2, then 3, always on weekends. Always the same vague itinerary, donor meetings, site visits, strategic planning, no specific names, no photos, nothing she ever really wanted to talk about. I remember one Sunday evening, a couple weeks before the reunion. She came home late, hair a little damp, like she'd rushed through a quick shower. She tossed her duffel in the laundry room and said something about being too exhausted to eat. Then she went straight to bed. No kiss. No, I missed you. Just a muttered, I'm wiped. It didn't register as strange at the time. I thought, she works hard. She's tired. That's normal. Now, I replay that moment and see it for what it was. Distance. Avoidance. There were more signs, too. Little things I'd brushed off at the time. Her phone, for example. Lena used to leave it everywhere, on the coffee table, on the kitchen counter, even in the bathroom. She wasn't secretive about it. We had the kind of relationship where privacy didn't feel like secrecy. We trusted each other. But after the reunion, that phone was never out of reach. Always screen down. Always on silent. She started carrying it from room to room, even when she was just grabbing something from the fridge. At first, I thought I was imagining it. So I tested it twice. Once I picked it up to hand it to her when it buzzed. She snatched it out of my hand with a forced smile. Thanks, she said too quickly. The second time, I walked into the room just as she was on a call. She turned away from me and ended it mid-sentence. Sorry, bad signal, she said, shoving the phone into her pocket. No caller ID. No explanation. Another time, I found a hoodie in the trunk of her car. It wasn't mine, and it didn't smell like her. I asked her about it casually, not trying to start anything. She paused just a beat too long before answering. Oh, that? I think it's from the office. One of the interns left it in the back seat. I've been meaning to drop it off. I believed her. Or maybe I wanted to believe her. I had no reason not to, right? But the more I thought about it, the more it didn't make sense. Why was the hoodie in the trunk if someone left it in the back seat? Why hadn't it moved in weeks? I started noticing other things, like how she started avoiding eye contact when I asked about her trips, or how she always had an excuse to avoid coming to my work events. Too tired, too much travel, I need a night to recharge. Once or twice is understandable, but it became a pattern. I began to feel like a ghost in my own home. I'd come into the room and she'd minimize tabs on her laptop. I'd ask about her day and she'd give me canned responses like she was reading from a script. Fine. Busy. Same old stuff. The conversations dried up. The laughter faded. We used to have these long, meandering talks about everything and nothing, books we were reading, weird dreams we had, where we might travel next. But now we mostly talked about groceries, laundry, and whether we had stamps. And here's the thing, I didn't confront her. I didn't accuse. I didn't snoop. I didn't want to be that guy. The suspicious husband. The one who spies and tracks and cross-examines. I told myself she's stressed. She's overworked. She's just pulling away a little. But deep down I knew. I started staying later at work even when I didn't need to. Not because I had things to do, but because being home felt heavier. I'd sit in the office staring at nothing, trying to quiet the voice in my head that kept asking the same question, what if she's seeing someone else? I didn't even have proof. Just instinct. And instinct is slippery. You can't hold it. Can't show it to anyone. But it burns inside you like a fuse. The lowest moment during that stretch was a night we were supposed to go out for dinner, her idea even. I made a reservation. Got dressed. Picked a place I knew she liked. I was actually kind of hopeful. Maybe we could talk. Reconnect. Try. She texted me 20 minutes before we were supposed to leave. So sorry, just got pulled into something. Rain check. No explanation. No call. Just that. I sat on the couch in my dress shirt, watching the ice in my whiskey glass melt. That was the moment I stopped making excuses for her. I realized I had been holding on to an image of our marriage that no longer existed. Lena wasn't just busy. She wasn't just tired. She was gone. Maybe not physically, but emotionally? Spiritually? She had left the building. I was holding hands with a memory. And what stung the most wasn't even the idea that she might be cheating. It was that she wouldn't tell me. Wouldn't give me the dignity of honesty. If something was broken, I could have tried to fix it. If she was unhappy, we could have faced it together. But instead, she chose silence. I started dreading the sound of her suitcase wheels on the hardwood. That zipping sound, that click of the handle it used to mean she was off doing good things in the world. Now it felt like an alarm bell. I remember asking her once, do you ever feel like we're not really us anymore? She looked up from her laptop and blinked at me. What do you mean? I don't know, I said. Just, do you feel it? The distance. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. We're just in a busy season. That's all. Happens to everyone. Then she changed the subject. Busy season. Sure. It's funny how you can live with someone, share a bed with someone, and still feel like a stranger in your own story. The version of Lena I loved, the woman who made playlists for our road trips, who sang off-key while cleaning, who used to rest her feet on my lap during movie nights, that version had vanished. What was left was someone I didn't recognize. Polite. Distracted. Elusive. And the more I thought about that night at the reunion, the hug, the eyes-closed smile, the body language, the more I realized it wasn't a one-time moment. It was the tip of a very large, very painful iceberg. I was no longer wondering if something was wrong. I was just waiting to find out how bad it really was. There's a difference between suspicion and proof. One gnaws at you quietly. The other hits like a freight train. The tipping point came a month after the reunion. By then, I'd stopped pretending things were fine. Lena had made 3 trips to Portland in 6 weeks. I didn't even ask questions anymore. She'd stopped offering details anyway. We lived in the same house but moved like ghosts around each other, polite, distant, functional. I felt like a guest in my own marriage. Then I got called to Portland for a client meeting. Last minute. Just a day trip. The kind of thing I would have normally texted Lena about just to say, hey, guess where I'm headed? But this time, I didn't tell her. Not right away. She had already left the night before, supposedly for more meetings with donors. She kissed my cheek and said, back late Sunday. Don't wait up. Then she rolled her suitcase out the door like it was just another routine trip. I watched her leave, something cold settling in my chest. I still didn't know the full truth, but I felt it brushing against my skin like static. So when I found myself on a morning flight to Portland, sitting in a window seat and staring out at the clouds, I made a decision. I was going to find out for sure. No more guessing. No more speculating in the shower or playing detective with vague answers and locked screens. I needed to see it for myself. I got through the meeting barely. I nodded in all the right places, took notes I wouldn't read, and shook hands I didn't care about. My mind was somewhere else entirely. As soon as it wrapped up, I left the office, sat in my rental car, and stared at my phone. She'd said she was having coffee with donors that afternoon, some cafe in the Pearl District. I remembered the name because I'd Googled it once, thinking we could go together next time we were in town. I drove there on instinct, not even sure what I expected to find. Maybe she'd actually be there, sipping tea and talking strategy. Maybe all my doubts would turn to shame and I'd laugh at myself for being so cynical. That hope died the second I saw her. She was sitting at a corner table by the window. It was her favorite kind of spot, tucked away but still with a view. I recognized her posture before I saw her face, the way she tilted her head when she was listening closely. But it wasn't just her I saw. Trent was sitting across from her. And they weren't talking about donors. He was holding her hand. Not in a professional, thanks for your time kind of way. In a quiet, familiar way. His fingers wrapped around hers, thumbs brushing gently across her knuckles. Her eyes were locked on his. They looked like they were in their own world. A safe in asterisk mate bubble. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I don't even know if I breathed. They talked for a few minutes. I couldn't hear them, but I didn't need to. Body language says more than words ever could. He leaned forward. She laughed, her fingers still laced with his. When they stood up to leave, he put his hand on the small of her back, the kind of touch that speaks of territory, of belonging. She didn't flinch. Didn't look over her shoulder. And as they walked out the door, he leaned in and kissed her temple. That was it. That was the moment. No speculation. No half-truths. No room for doubt. They never saw me. I was just another person in the city, invisible behind a windshield. But I saw everything. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes after they left, staring at the space they'd occupied. The table, the two half-finished drinks, the chairs still slightly angled toward each other. All I could think was, this is what it looks like when someone stops choosing you. I drove straight back to Seattle. Didn't stop for gas. Didn't stop for food. Barely remembered the drive. Just white lines on pavement and a storm in my chest. When I got home, I didn't make a sound. I turned off the lights, pulled the curtains, and sat in the dark. I didn't cry. Didn't scream. I just disconnected. Like pulling the plug on an old computer. Everything in me went quiet. That night, when Lena walked through the door, it was like nothing had happened. She dropped her bag by the entryway, slipped off her shoes, and walked into the kitchen. I heard the fridge open, the clink of a water bottle. Then footsteps down the hall. She paused at the bedroom door, saw the lump I made in the bed, and whispered, "Hey, babe. I'm home." I didn't answer. She thought I was asleep. In the morning, I got up before her. Showered. Made coffee. Sat at the table until she walked in, hair a mess, eyes still puffy with sleep. "Morning," she said, rubbing her face. I looked at her. Really looked. And then I said it. "I saw you." She froze. "What?" "In Portland. Yesterday. I saw you at the cafe. With Trent." Color drained from her face. She stared at me like I'd punched her. "I had a meeting," I continued. "I stopped by. I saw everything." Her mouth opened but no sound came out. Just the widening of her eyes. The twitch in her fingers. She finally found words. "Ethan, I can explain." "No," I said. "Don't explain. Just tell me how long." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "It wasn't supposed to happen." "That's not an answer." She swallowed. "Since April. For months. 4 months of lies. Of fake smiles and phone calls in the other room. Of excuses and rain checks in silence." I nodded. Took a sip of coffee. It tasted like metal. She sat down slowly, like her legs were giving out. Her voice trembled. "It wasn't serious. It's just. I don't know," I felt it. "Seen?" I said. "Wanted?" She looked down. I shook my head. "You could have just told me. You could have said you were unhappy. That you needed more. But instead, you went back to someone who already belongs in the past." There were tears in her eyes, but I didn't care. Not in that moment. "I think you should leave," I said. She blinked. "What?" "I can't do this right now. You need to go. Stay with a friend. A hotel." "I don't care." Her voice cracked. "Ethan, please. Don't shut me out." "You already shut me out," I said. "I'm just following your lead." She didn't argue. Didn't beg. Just packed a bag in silence and left within the hour. And when the door clicked shut behind her, I sat back down at the kitchen table and stared at the empty chair across from me. The chair she always sat in. The chair that now felt like a stranger had been there all along. That was the day I stopped asking questions. Because I already knew all the answers. There's a kind of silence that follows betrayal. It's not peaceful. It doesn't heal. It stretches out like a fog, thick, heavy, and impossible to see through. The morning Lena left, I didn't move from the table. I just sat there, staring at the place where her coffee mug usually sat. It was gone now, like her. The quiet in the house wasn't new, but it felt different this time. It wasn't space. It was absence. I didn't go into work that day. Couldn't. I called in, said I had a family emergency, and left it at that. My boss didn't ask questions. I think my voice said enough. I packed a bag later that afternoon. Just the essentials. Jeans, a few shirts, my toothbrush, a book I'd been meaning to read but never had the time. I didn't take much. It didn't feel like a clean break. More like I was creating space I could breathe in. I called Caleb, my oldest friend. We hadn't talked much lately, mostly because I'd been too busy convincing myself my marriage wasn't falling apart. But when I asked if I could crash at his place for a few nights, he didn't hesitate. Of course, man. Come over. No questions. That's the thing about old friends. They know when to ask and when not to. His place was a 2-bedroom apartment near the water. Simple, uncluttered, and completely unlike the house Lena and I had built together. I dropped my bag on the floor of his guest room and sat on the edge of the bed. The sheets smelled like laundry detergent and bachelorhood. Comforting, in a weird way. Caleb handed me a beer without saying anything. We sat on his tiny balcony in the cold and let the silence do the talking. When I finally spoke, I told him everything. From the reunion to the cafe. The hand-holding. The lie that broke the dam. He didn't say, "I told you so." He didn't offer cliches. Just listened. "You staying here long?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," I said. "Just not going back. Not yet." Later that week, I moved into a motel. I didn't want to keep imposing on Caleb, and honestly, I needed the solitude. It was the kind of place with scratchy sheets and stale carpet, the kind of place you stay when you're in between stories. I kept getting texts from Lena. Day 1, "I'm so sorry. Please let me explain. Can we talk?" Day 2, "I miss you. I don't know how to fix this, but I'll do anything." Day 4, "I ended things with Trent. Please, Ethan. Say something." I didn't reply, not because I wanted to punish her, but because I didn't have anything left to say. Every word felt like a trap, something that would lead us right back to the place I was trying to climb out of. She started calling. I didn't answer. Her voice filled my voicemail inbox with tears, with desperate apologies, with promises I didn't believe anymore. I deleted them all, one after another. Erasing her voice became its own kind of therapy. I wasn't angry, not the way people expect you to be. I wasn't shouting or smashing plates. I didn't fantasize about revenge or imagine throwing her stuff out on the lawn. The truth is, I felt empty, like I'd lost something I never really had. Or maybe like I'd been robbed so slowly I hadn't realized it was happening until I was already hollowed out. In the quiet of the motel room, I began to replay everything. Every skipped kiss. Every excuse. Every time I'd sat across from her at the dinner table and thought, she's not really here anymore. I kept thinking about the night after the reunion. How she'd curled into bed beside me like everything was fine. I remembered watching her sleep, wondering if I was just imagining things. Now I knew I wasn't. That night was real. So was the hug. So was everything she didn't say. I thought about going home a few times. Not to make up. Not even to confront her. Just to see it. To feel what our house had become without the illusion holding it up. But I didn't. Because the truth is, it wasn't my home anymore. Not really. A home needs more than walls and a mortgage. It needs trust. It needs love that shows up every day, not just when it's convenient. One night, about a week after I left, I walked down to the lake near the motel. It was quiet. Just me, a bench, and the sound of water lapping against the shore. I sat there for hours, staring at the reflection of the streetlights dancing across the surface. That's when I decided I wasn't going back. Not just yet, maybe not ever. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want a screaming match or a dramatic ending. I wanted peace. And maybe the only way to find it was to stop trying to glue together something that had already shattered. That same night, Lena sent another message. Shorter this time. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But if you ever want to talk, I'll be here. For the first time, I didn't delete it. I didn't reply either. I just let it sit there. A few days later, I got an email from a therapist Lena and I had seen once during a rough patch a couple years back. She said Lena had reached out and asked if we could schedule a session. Just to talk, she wrote. No pressure. Just space. I stared at the email for a long time. My first instinct was to delete it too. But something made me pause. Not because I wanted to fix things. Not yet. But because I needed to understand how we got here. I needed answers not about Trent or even the cheating. I needed to know how the woman I'd loved for nearly a decade had disappeared right in front of me and why I hadn't noticed sooner. I replied, 1 session. That's all I'm agreeing to. She confirmed the appointment for the following week. I didn't tell Caleb. Didn't tell anyone. Just marked it on my calendar and closed the laptop. That night, as I lay on the stiff motel bed staring at the ceiling, I realized something. The silence wasn't punishing me. It was teaching me. It was showing me who I was without her. What I wanted. What I could no longer live without. Love? Maybe. Forgiveness? Possibly. But blind trust? That was gone. And in its place, something harder. Sharper. Clarity. I don't know what I expected to feel once Lena was out of the house. Relief? Rage? A burst of clarity that would make everything make sense? But what I actually felt was numb. Not the kind of numb where you don't care. It was the kind where you feel too much all at once and your brain just pulls the plug to keep you from short-circuiting. I drifted through those early days in limbo. I worked because I had to. I ate just enough to not get sick. I slept when exhaustion finally dragged me under. I kept my head down and told as few people as possible. I couldn't bear the questions. I didn't want to hear, I'm sorry, or she doesn't deserve you, or you'll be okay. Not yet. Not while everything still echoed. But then, about a week after I left, Caleb texted me late one night. Can I call you? I stared at it for a minute. Caleb never asks. He just calls. I type back. Yeah. What's up? My phone rang seconds later. I didn't want to say anything earlier, he said, voice low like he wasn't sure if I'd hang up on him. But I've been thinking. That guy, Trent. He's not exactly new to this kind of thing. I sat up straighter on the motel bed. What do you mean? I asked around. One of my clients used to work at that non-profit Lena's involved with, the Education Foundation. Turns out Trent's been sniffing around there for a while. That got my attention. He continued, from what she told me, it's a pattern. He gets close to these women, usually the ones who travel a lot, juggling 10 things at once. Starts out professional. Then personal. Makes them feel seen. Heard. Wanted. My throat tightened. And when it blows up? Caleb added. He moves on. Same moves. Same story. I leaned back against the motel wall, heart thudding in a sick rhythm. Why would she fall for that? There was a pause. Caleb hesitated, then said something that stuck with me because guys like him don't come on strong. They just show up when you're not sure if anyone else really sees you. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was imagining Lena in his arms, I'd already seen that in real time. What kept me awake was something worse, the realization that the betrayal wasn't about him at all. It was about her. She had chosen to be seen by someone else instead of speaking to me. She had listened to someone else instead of giving me a chance to fight for us. That was what hurt? Not that she got lost, but that she never asked me to come find her. The next morning, I drove back to the lake. Same bench. Same reflection of streetlights rippling across the water. I sat there and tried to see the bigger picture. Not just the affair, but the erosion before it. How she had slipped into someone else's orbit without ever saying a word to me. And how I'd let her drift. That was the part one hated the most. Not her. Not Trent. Me. I'd been so busy trusting the version of Lena I fell in love with that I hadn't seen the version she was becoming. I assumed we were still solid because we didn't fight, because we still split chores and kissed goodbye in the mornings. But those things weren't proof of connection. They were just rituals. Muscle memory. We stopped showing up for each other a long time before she ever crossed that line. I hadn't seen it. Or maybe I had. And I just didn't want to look. Later that week, Lena sent another text. No pleading. No apologies. Just, I ended it. I thought you should know. I stared at it, wondering what she thought that would change. I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say? Thanks for stopping? Congratulations on finally realizing the guy was toxic? No. It was too late for that. But something in that message stuck with me. Not the words. The tone. It was flat. Tired. Like someone who wasn't even sure she deserved to be heard. The following day, the therapist emailed again. Said Lena had confirmed the session. Still wanted to meet. Still hoped I would show up. I went. Not because I forgave her. Not because I wanted to make it work. But because I wanted to look her in the eye and ask, who were you when you did this to me? She was already there when I walked in. Same tired eyes. Same hollow expression. She looked smaller. Not physically. Just emotionally worn. Like her soul had shrunk 3 sizes. We sat down. The therapist asked a few warm-up questions, tried to ease the tension. Lena answered softly. I mostly stared out the window. Then the therapist said, Lena, can you tell Ethan what changed for you? What made you step outside the marriage? Lena swallowed. It wasn't one thing. It was 100 little things I didn't know how to say out loud. I stayed silent. She continued, I didn't plan it. I didn't wake up one day and decide to hurt you. But I think I started to feel like a ghost in my own life. Like I was just moving through the motions and nobody saw me. Not even you. That stung. Because it sounded so familiar. You could have told me, I said quietly. I know, she said. I know that now. The therapist gave me a look, an invitation to respond. So I did. I'm not here because I want to fix everything, I said, still on Lena. I'm here because I need to understand why the woman I trusted with my life chose someone like Trent. She nodded slowly. I didn't know who he was when it started. I just knew he listened. That he made me feel like I wasn't invisible. And now I know he does this. That I wasn't special. I was just next. The words hung in the air, raw and unpolished. I believed her. And that was the worst part. Because if she had been swept away by some great love story, maybe I could have blamed fate. But this was a slow, willing surrender to something that never had real value. The therapist wrapped up the session by suggesting we take time. More space. More honesty. No decisions yet. We agreed. When we left, we stood on the sidewalk awkwardly like 2 people at the end of a first date that went nowhere. I'm sorry, Lena said. I know that doesn't mean much, but I am. I know, I said. And I did. But it didn't make anything easier. She turned to walk away, then paused. I ended it because I saw your face that night. At the reunion. When you saw us hugging. I didn't realize until then what I was risking. Then why didn't you stop? She turned back to face me, tears in her eyes. Because I thought I'd already lost you. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. She walked away. I watched her go, not knowing if I wanted her to turn back. She didn't.